Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Sunday, June 20th, 2021. I have a few interesting things for you guys today, and hopefully, it went well last time, but I'm hoping that this recording app goes alright this time. I think there was an update on it, so I'm not sure what all that entails. Hopefully the company or whoever makes it made it better. I don't know what's going on with that. I do want to plan a live stream sometime soon. I haven't planned it yet. I didn't do one last night, and I was going to because my sister's graduation party was yesterday, and we were out there a lot longer than we expected to be out there. It was a nice turnout for her. Ended up working out very well. And yeah, a lot of things are happening lately. Channels are getting taken down off of YouTube, which is no surprise. Everything pretty much seems to be just continuing full speed ahead. Full speed ahead with no signs of slowing down, no opposition whatsoever. And if people are out there opposing something, they're opposing the wrong thing, or they are just lost in a sea of disinformation. And most people are, apathetic and don't care. And the rest of us are drowning in information, but starving for knowledge. Let's go ahead and jump right in. This article is from USA Today, and it was about 4 hours ago. West's drought has no end in sight. If we do nothing, it's going to be really bad. Oh yes, if we do nothing, it's going to be really, really bad. And we have to restrict your water usage because, we have all these droughts going on. And if you saw my community post from yesterday, and when I found that video of the artificial rain cloud maker, we know they have power to control the weather, to manipulate the weather and weather patterns and all this stuff. But these droughts are so bad, why wouldn't they just create thousands of those clouds? The guy made it seem so easy. All they do is take the hydrogen and mix it with oxygen, and they can create an endless supply of water and this and that. Well, why don't they get to work out west? Oh no, that's right, because geoengineering, and they're manipulating the weather into causing it not to rain and to be really hot. To be on par with Agenda 21, problem, reaction, solution. About 40% of the country is currently experiencing drought conditions, according to U.S. Drought Monitor. That's a crazy amount. I wonder if they're talking about population-wise or land-wise, because that would be two very different maps. Doing nothing to reduce water usage could lead to an unimaginable future for the West. If we do nothing, it's going to be really bad. Agriculture, which uses about 90% of ground and surface water in many western states, is likely to be the first to be impacted by shortages. Spring rainstorms were enough to fill Utah's reservoirs or rejuvenate the soil, so Governor Spencer J. Cox took his plea to Twitter. Fix your leaky faucets, stop taking long showers, get rid of the lawn, and pray for rain. What does get rid of the lawn mean? What does that mean? The crisis isn't unique to Utah. About 40% of the country is experiencing drought conditions, according to U.S. Drought Monitor. Drought has been a consistent problem in the Southwest for about 2 decades, and is increasingly creating an existential question. Does the West have enough water to go around? Huge reservoirs are drying up as drought threatens farms and fuels wildfires. Cox, a Republican, warned the drought puts crops, livestock, and wildlife, the state's food supply, and really our way of life at risk. That's the point. That's literally the point in why they're doing this. Because they know that. It's all happening at a pace that is surprising and alarming experts. Some worry that without major water conservation, the West could be on track for unprecedented water shortages. States and local governments are ramping up rules aimed at cutting back water usage, and most of the initial burden is expected to hit farmers, who are responsible for the vast amount of water use. But individuals are also seeing water restrictions affect them, especially if they have a lawn to water. Even so, conservation may not be enough to fix the problem, Cox feared. We need some divine intervention. Scientists and advocates suggest another solution. The West needs to drastically cut its water usage, and that means more than taking shorter showers. Here we go. Here we go. Rain alone unlikely to fix the drought problem. Droughts can be short-term, but the one facing the West probably isn't. The problem appears to be too big. The trend too strong to be reversed by drenching rains or a few above-average years of precipitation. I don't see it going back to a pre-drought time anytime soon. Beva Dahiza, Executive Director of National Integrated Drought Information System, told USA Today. Oh, kind of like how we're not going back to a pre-situation? But I digress. And the spring 2020 study warned that the West is exiting an unusually wet time in its history and heading straight into an unusually dry time that could last years, decades, or centuries. Scientists see that as a trend playing out year after year. The anticipation is always that eventually rain will come, and so we're stretching out the water that we do have, said Nancy Silover, who recently retired as Arizona's state climatologist. She compared the water supply issues in the West with that of survivors on a desert island. You have to say, how long do you think it'll be until someone rescues us? How much does everyone get when you simply don't know when the rain will come? I'm probably just going to stop at this right here because there's a lot of reading in this article, as you can see. And I have other things that I need to get to. And I usually spend a lot of time reading certain things, and I don't want to do that with this. But, yes, this right here, this could lead to further justification of a population reduction if it starts getting even worse than what they're saying. Well, if they make it worse than what they're saying. Then they can say, well, if we had less people, then we could, use more water. It's always multifaceted, always multi-angled, but if you live out west, I suggest that you leave. Please leave. You do not want to stay out there and try to wait this out, because eventually they're going to come down to strict enforcement, which technically you can't escape that either, because it is Agenda 2030. It is Agenda 21 and all that, but it's going to get bad. Let's go ahead and move on. Alright, I came across this one today, and yes, it's a TMZ article, but it's what the TMZ article says that I was concerned for. Macy Gray, let's try and say goodbye, Old Glory. Give me a new U.S. flag. You read that right. Macy Gray thinks America's ready to walk away from its national flag, and even though we may stumble, she thinks it's for the best, and that the time has come for a new design. Yes, this will be on the increase. They have to do this. And they will. They will eventually get rid of our flag. Of course. You can't have their New World Order unless you get rid of the United States. You can't. And if we get a new flag, that just further solidifies the fact that this is no longer the land of the free. The I Try singer penned an op-ed this week for all outlets, Market Watch, in which she made the case for giving Old Glory a facelift, because as she puts it, the current version is tattered, dated, divisive, and incorrect. just like the Confederate flag, apparently. First of all, prove to me that the meaning of that flag is tattered, dated, divisive, and incorrect. How is the flag divisive? How is it incorrect? That's not even something that can be correct or incorrect. The 50 stars represent the 50 states. The 13 stripes represent the 13 original colonies. The red stripes represent the blood that was shed by people who died for freedom. And I'm honestly not sure what the white means, so if somebody wants to tell me that, I would very much appreciate that. But yes, our flag is not divisive. It's not tattered, dated. It's old. Well, so most flags, the British flag's been around for way, way longer than our flag. Our flag is supposed to stand for freedom. But this is what's going to happen. This is literally what is being put forth. And one could argue that, that this is just one person saying this, but I don't believe she's the only one, and we will see more. Macy's justification basically lies in a couple of points. One, she says the American flag's rep was dragged through the mud permanently and beyond repair due to the events of January 6th, when a bunch of MAGA truthers carried it high alongside Trump's flags into the Capitol. And now we see the reason why that happened. Again, multifaceted. They're going to play this angle. Oh, January 6th and this and that. And we all know that that was just complete garbage Homeland Security put on. She also says that numerically the stars are off and should be adjusted to 52 to take DC and Puerto Rico into account, which have been lobbying for statehood for a good long while now. Lastly, she suggests some color changes to reflect modern day America. I don't get it. Is this what she means right here? To change it to change it to different colors, different people's skin? That's divisive. That makes absolutely no sense. A man's color is an illusion. It's apples to apples. Red apples and green apples are still apples. Different colored people are still people. You still bleed the same. You still have feelings. You still want to raise families and live in freedom. It has nothing to do with skin color. This is more of the ages-old Hegelian dialectic, divide and conquer, the people using order out of chaos. The whole thing. The whole thing. Let's see. Just basically, we covered that. We were just talking about that. Yep, going on about all this stuff. Blue square and the red stripes, which stand for vigilance, perseverance, and valor, respectively, can stay because she believes USA is still very much that. Ends are pitched 62 years later, 2021. We have changed and it's time for a reset. A transformation. One that represents all states and all of us. Fine language there, Mrs. Macy Gray. Reset. Like the Great Reset. Transformation, as in Agenda 2030. Come on. It's too easy. It's too easy to call these people out and to see what they are doing. The U.S. flag has never been, quote, divisive. It's not something that can or can't be. Crazy. If anybody would have suggested this even 10 years ago, they would have been destroyed, even including by the media. But let's move on. And of course, as we keep talking about the reset and the controlled collapse of the United States and the world, we have here 40 cities that could be poised for a housing crisis. The lessons of the 2008 housing crisis are a living memory, and the effects of the recession of that era are still being felt. Although today's housing market is largely hot, experts are bracing for a wave of evictions triggered by situation-related disruptions that they fear could be the catalyst for a different kind of housing crisis that could rival even the dreariest days of the Great Recession. Some American cities are much more vulnerable to a housing downturn than others, according to a new study from Go Banking Rates. Okay, let's see. Using data from sources that include the U.S. Census Bureau, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and all these different people, the study examined factors such as mortgage, delinquencies, foreclosures, and home owner and rental vacancy rates. All 40 are among the 200 largest cities in the country, but they aren't spread out equally across the nation. States such as Texas, for example, are disproportionately represented with 7 cities on the list. California, on the other hand, doesn't have a single entry despite a population of nearly 40 million and some of the most expensive housing markets in America. Okay, and the first one is Hartford, Connecticut. I'm going to rush through this too. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my neck of the woods. Pittsburgh is literally not even an hour away. Maybe just about if you're driving the speed limit. Hampton, Virginia. Clearwater, Florida. Corpus Christi, Texas. Newark, New Jersey. San Antonio, Texas. Killeen, Texas. Louisville, Kentucky. Jacksonville, Florida. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I've actually been there quite a few times. Miami, Florida. Atlanta, Georgia. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Topeka, Kansas. Memphis, Tennessee. Amarillo, Texas. Birmingham, Alabama. Norfolk, Virginia. Springfield, Massachusetts. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Orlando, Florida. El Paso, Texas. Syracuse, New York. Miami Beach, Florida. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Little Rock, Arkansas. Brownsville, Texas. Lafayette, Louisiana. Mobile, Alabama. New Orleans, Louisiana. Augusta, Georgia. Baltimore, Maryland. Columbus, Georgia. Shreveport, Louisiana. Fayetteville, North Carolina. Actually stayed down there for a couple months, actually, when my mom and my stepdad first got together, because he was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne, and they are based out of Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fort Bragg. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Jackson, Mississippi. Macon, Georgia. Laredo, Texas, and that is actually it. I will try to remember to leave a link to this article so people that are interested in reading into this further. There's a lot here, a lot of facts and figures and whatnot, but I brought this up, of course, to show that, yeah, most places, not even just cities, will be in for a housing crisis. That was the whole point of the 2008 crash, was so the government, when they bailed out the housing market, they literally took over the housing market, because before then it was driven by the private sector. But then after that, the government took it over, of course, in the form of a bailout. Not long after that is when Obamacare was signed through, which was the government control of the health care. That's already 2/6 of the economy. Fast forward to today, they own everything. We literally live under a communist government. The republic is already dead. We just can't see it yet. Well, some of us can, but for the most part, people don't see it. 4th of July is coming up, and I already see people getting ready for it. I already see people, they got their boats on the river, people talking about it, celebrating. What's there to celebrate, honestly? Nowadays, what is there to celebrate? Moving on. I actually have a lot that I'm trying to fit into this video, but if I wanted to sit here and read everything, there's some things that I want to read the entire thing, but this stuff here I'm just bringing up just to make you aware of it. 50,000 security disasters waiting to happen, the problem of America's water supplies. And what it's talking about is this. On January 15th, a hacker tried to poison a water treatment plant that served parts of the San Francisco Bay Area. It didn't seem hard. The hacker had the username and password for a former employee's TeamViewer account, a popular program that lets users remotely control their computers, according to a private report compiled by the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center in February and seen by NBC News. Okay, so to poison a water supply, all you need is a username and password? Come on. And people honestly believe that just some hacker tried to do this. I don't think it was. After logging in, the hacker, whose name and motive are unknown and who hasn't been identified by law enforcement, deleted programs that the water plant used to treat drinking water. The hack wasn't discovered until the following day, and the facility changed its passwords and reinstalled the programs. Quote, no failures were reported as a result of this incident, and no individuals in the city reported illnesses from water-related failures, end quote. The report, which did not specify which water treatment plant had been breached, noted. So, what I want to know is why is it so, if this was true, for the sake of this conversation, if this was true, why is it so easy for somebody to get in and poison water supplies of a huge population of people in this country and to not be identified by law enforcement in split second? Because that's all it really takes. They're gonna keep going on with this stuff too. The cyber attacks, the water shortages, all the water problems. Remember when they the government recommended they put psychedelics in the water so people will be happy during the pandemic and be happy with the authoritarian control? I remember that. I remember that very well. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were doing it and just not telling anybody. They were talking about putting psilocybin in the water supply of the entire country, so people would be happier and more accepting of these government measures. Give me a break, man. Give me a break. And this leads us right into our next one, which is one that I actually want to read to you guys. This was posted up 22 hours ago, as you can see right here. U.S. in great danger of an EMP attack. There is a great and urgent danger of an EMP attack that would obliterate the United States and kill most Americans. Unfortunately, the government is not prepared. I would say that they don't want to be prepared. They're prepared to save their own skin and their own stuff, but not ours. Of course. And we all know what an electromagnetic pulse is. A lot of people believe that, oh, the power is going to go out and it's eventually going to come back on. And it's not just simple like they're turning off the power. No, no, no. This is an overload of all circuits. Too much electricity. An electromagnetic pulse is the electric wave produced by a nuclear blast that can knock out electronics in an electrical grid up to 1,000 miles away. The disruption could cause catastrophic damage and loss of life if power is not restored or backed up quickly, since millions of people would die of starvation and sickness in a few months. And large nuclear blasts are not the only way this could happen. They could cut the power off and blame it on, say, an EMP from any one of the boogeymen that they're telling us this week. On February 3rd, 2021, Isabel wrote an article titled, "Russia's Super Electronic Pulse Weapon Could Destroy U.S. Grid. Experts Warn." That was published by a Final Warning website. Isabel explained the danger of an EMP attack on the destruction to the nation's electrical grid has been a concern for many years, but now Russia appears to be mastering systems that can overcome the protections that have been put in place to preserve the integrity of the grid. Putin literally just came out and said that our government was telling them to commit these cyber attacks against Americans. I should have brought that clip up. But, of course, they're all a bunch of liars, so you can either take Putin at his word, believe what he says, or not. That's left to the individual's ability to discern. But it's not just Russia or China or anybody. It's people within our own government. This is the point. This is part of the reset. They have to get everything on the grid, on the new grid, the smart grid, the 5G grid. She said Russia developed specialized super electromagnetic pulse weapon in a warhead that could travel at speeds of Mach 20. I'm not sure what that is. Will be able to plunge America into darkness with very little advance warning. Dr. Peter Vincent Price, Chief of Staff of the newly re-established Congressional Electromagnetic Pulse Commission, Executive Director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, and a Congressional Advisory Board dedicated to achieving protection of the United States from electromagnetic pulse, cyber warfare, mass destruction, terrorism, and other threats to civilian critical infrastructures on an accelerated basis. Dr. Price is also the Director of the United States Nuclear Strategy Forum and Advisory Board to Congress on policies to counter weapons of mass destruction in foreign governments, including the United Kingdom, Israel, Canada, and Kazakhstan. Consult with Dr. Price on EMP and cyber and other strategic threats. And it just keeps going on about this guy right here. He looks like a war hawk. Look in his eyes. Look at him. Do you like him? Imagine this guy trying to protect your grid. Yeah, right. You can see the look on his face. This guy would drop bombs on anybody in a heartbeat. Okay, let's keep going. I understand. Okay, so apparently he wrote a book, The Power and Light, in March 2020. Amazon described this book as follows. EMP could be caused by nature or man and poses an existential threat to our electronic civilization. A nationwide blackout lasting 1 year could kill millions, up to 90% of the American people, through starvation, disease, and societal collapse. Kind of like what Deagle.com says, the reason that we would drop from 330 million to 99 million, which would be close to a 90% drop. EMP is the ultimate cyber weapon in the military doctrines and plans of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran for a new way of warfare, described as the greatest revolution in military affairs in history. The EMP Commission has been warning about the existential EMP threat for nearly 20 years. So alarming is the looming EMP threat that the Commission has gone above and beyond the call of duty, making extraordinary efforts, been waging a war against ignorance, a war against the stubborn, irresponsible U.S. government bureaucracy, a war against powerful and dishonest electric power industry lobbies, and a war against press bias and disinformation to save the American people from possibly imminent EMP catastrophe. The EMP war has been and is a real war, just like the thermonuclear Cold War was a real war over ideas, science, technology, policies, and strategy to prevent or survive Armageddon. America cannot afford to lose the EMP war. Learn about existential threat from EMP and become part of the solution. I basically brought this up just to show that it's not just news and other people that are warning of EMPs. This is what they do, and they come out and say that they're the heroes, and we're here to help, and we're trying to make sure that everything's going to work all right, and make sure that everything's hardened and able to withstand. And no. Come on, Frankie. Again, you guys know Frank. He's always sending me stuff. I appreciate it a lot. And he watches, so Frank, thank you, dude, honestly. Like, you sending me stuff, literally, I use it in almost all my videos. Every time you send me something. He knows that, though. I talk to him every day. Okay, so down here to this quote. President Biden's lifting of President Trump's ban on Chinese involvement in the U.S. grid will make it easier for them to attack our electric supply. She added that Pry said the current political turmoil presents a golden opportunity for an EMP strike, and Washington's impotence and irresolution will invite future, increasingly aggressive cyber attacks. Isabel stated the following, quote, "The truth is that enemies of our nation, such as Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, view the U.S. as an easy target given how much of our economy depends on electricity, the internet, and electronic communications. An attack would easily wipe out all of those, putting every American in danger." Pry outlined these advancements in EMP warfare in a new report on Russia. EMP weapons, he says, are exploded at very high up in the atmosphere, allowing them to wipe out electric grids and computers across wide swaths of the country in outages that could last longer than a year. The nation's large transformers controlling the grid and high-voltage control cables are said to be particularly vulnerable. Transformers take 2 years to build and cost roughly $7 million each. We are already behind schedule in having backups ready. This means that if many of our transformers go out at once, as they would an attack, there is little we could do to restore power in a reasonable time frame. So you got this guy who used to work in government, he's now coming out talking about how vulnerable we are to EMPs. And they're really, 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 really starting to shape this narrative that it's Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, all this stuff. But this actually wasn't the article I wanted to read you guys in full. That's one of the next ones. Okay, this one is called New World Order is Here. June 11th, 2021. And of course, we're talking about the G7 again. Look how they go kidding around. They're like, yeah, man, yeah, we're in the club, but not really. The New World Order is here. At a meeting before the G7 summit, which is being held in Cornwall, England, United Kingdom, the mop head and the moron signed an updated version of the Atlantic Charter. When world leaders recall history in this very public way, it's a signal of monumental change. How sad and frightening is it that's occurring when the United States has the most lame and pathetic president we ever had? Do you hear the bells tolling? Why is this not the one that I had up the other day? Sorry, guys. I don't think this is the one I had up the other day. I'll read down here a little bit. Last week, H.R. McMaster had as his guest Anders Fogh Rasmussen. Discussion was about NATO, the EU, and near the end, Rasmussen suggested that they need a free trade agreement with the world's democracies. Let's see. This person said, personally, I think the people of the United States have had enough of this, quote, free trade. What these global leaders call free trade is not really about trade or commerce. It's about signing international agreements, building international law, transferring sovereignty to global institutions, and most importantly, they've been used to gut the American economy and to destroy the American middle class by exporting the American economy. Let me go to this other one. Okay, this is the one that I wanted to actually bring up. I should have read further. Technocracy, the New World Order economic system. What is technocracy and the meaning of technocrat? From the horse's mouth, technocracy was defined in a publication from 1938, Technocracy, Inc. Technocracy is the science of social engineering, scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population of this continent. For the first time in human history, it will be done as a scientific technical engineering problem. There will be no place for politics or politicians, finance or financiers, rackets or racketeers. The Technocrat. Technocracy is a totalitarian system of government where scientists, engineers, and technicians monitor and control all facets of personal and civic life, economic, social, and political. Herein lies the real danger. They are unelected controllers behind the stealthy takeover of the world that we see unfolding before our eyes today. Yes, this is literally it. We will be ruled by these, quote, experts that they already say that actually influence every decision that our leaders make. Technocracy is an ideology that grew as technology advanced, and it's meant to gain total control of society. According to Patrick Wood, technocrats are interested in an economic system, not a political system, and their goal is to create a scientific dictatorship, he explains. Scientific dictatorship as in what Orwell was talking about? Yeah, that seems like the right one. Or Huxley also spoke of a scientific dictatorship for the whole world. Technocracy eschews property rights, obsoletes capitalism, hates politicians and traditional political structures, and promises a lofty utopian dream made possible only if engineers, scientists, and technicians are allowed to run society. When Aldous Huxley penned Brave New World in 1932, he accurately foresaw this wrenching transformation of society and predicted the end of it would be a scientific dictatorship unlike anything the world has ever seen. Indeed, technocracy is transforming economics, government, religion, and law. It rules by regulation, not by rule of law. Policies are dreamed up by unelected and unaccountable technocrats buried in government agencies, and regional governance structures are replacing sovereign entities like cities, counties, and states. Still, say you never heard of technocracy. Well, you probably have, but under different names. Tentacles of technocracy include programs such as sustainable development, green economy, global warming / climate change, cap and trade, Agenda 21, Common Core state standards, conservation easements, public-private partnerships, smart growth, land use, energy smart grid, de-urbanization, and depopulation. Oh yes, all those different names. They got a million different names for it. They always do. Always. They promote the exploitation of environmental issues that justify global transformation on the basis of human-caused global warming. United Nations Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Program is interwoven with the Great Reset, and both go hand in hand. And as mentioned above, it relies heavily upon using a crisis, or the perception of a crisis, in order to give themselves justification to take large power grabs at a time and create policies and legislation that allow them to strip freedom away from the population, with the population going along with it, thinking that it's for their own good and safety. Does that not describe our current situation? That literally describes our current situation to the letter. But human and well-being and safety not always been characteristics and traits of technocrats. Technocrats were the ones behind the eugenics program in the United States throughout the 1930s and 40s, and led to compulsory sterilization laws on genetically inferior women whom they did not want to continue breeding. And when you look at modern day technocrats like Bill Gates, whose parents were proponents of the eugenics program, who himself's been pushing to cure the entire population with a cure that many people do not trust. And Elon Musk, who is working on projects to link the human brain to artificial intelligence, and they're sending tens of thousands of 5G satellites into space to beam back the internet over the globe. Well, I would say they're ballooning a bunch of those 5G satellites to hover up there like they normally do. One has to question what the intentions really are. These agendas are being imposed upon humanity without asking for our permission. This is the danger of having extremely wealthy individuals who are more than likely only frontmen for this global cabal, using their wealth and influence to enforce an agenda on a global scale that will totally transform life on Earth as we know it, and to pressure humanity to slip into a scientific tyranny and dictatorship. As Patrick Wood describes, the playbook is Technocracy and the actors are technocrats. That is, scientists and engineers who think it is their role to control all of nature, resources, manufacturing, consumption, and management of the herd of humans on Earth that all this is spent on in the end. Note, not all scientists and engineers are technocrats. To a technocrat, whatever the problem is, science has the answer. Nobody else could possibly have an answer if it isn't science-driven. Ultimately, technocrats envision the world being controlled by artificial intelligence. Before I describe the technocratic vision of the entire world being run by artificial intelligence, I want to tell a story how I first learned about the word technocrat. Very small introduction to the word, and it was many years ago, and I was only a teenager, but it always stuck in my mind. And we can just go past this part here about this guy's, how we learned the word technocrat. That's not very important. Okay, today it is very sobering to research the agenda of technocrats and to connect the dots and see their plans for the world and humanity. And they plan to link the human brain to AI, which is an agenda that is being worked on and developed. Elon Musk, a technocrat, has a company called Neuralink and has been experimenting with brain-machine interfaces, which literally puts silicon in your skull in order to merge human consciousness with artificial intelligence. Also, Musk and now Jeff Bezos, both technocrats, are competing to fill space, well, not the sky. This person that wrote this obviously believes believes one of the older lies, but in order to give 100% of Earth broadband access while being continuously covered in 5G contamination. 5G is being sold as having high-speed capabilities and greater bandwidth, but there are great concerns about how the ultra-high frequency of 600 megahertz will affect the human body, not to mention how it will be used for tyrannical surveillance of society. Technocrats also plan to build functional smart cities designed specifically to control the population. Here are some key elements of smart cities written by Patrick Wood. Surveillance. Of course, we know that. Monitor people using biometric facial scanning, geospatial tracking, financial data, social media, etc. A population that is surveilled can easily be controlled. Transportation. Force people out of private vehicles into shared public transportation, such as scooters, bicycles, buses, light rail, etc. Without private transportation, they are locked into the city and out of the rural area. Data. Collect real-time data from the Internet of Everything. Internet of Everything is an expansion of the Internet of Things concept to include people as well. Control, of course. Social engineering is always leading the thought process of smart city development. However, unlike elected political representatives, social engineers are always self-appointed technocrats who decide that citizens, or what citizens should or should not do, where citizens should or should not go, with whom citizens should or should not associate with. So basically, their goal is to connect everything to artificial intelligence, which begs the question of why Joe Murray points out, and it's a control system with an agenda for total slavery, a total prison planet with every aspect of life on Earth locked down and under their control. They want a global technological grid in place where everyone and everything is connected to it, where every transaction, action, and even thought is monitored and controlled by artificial intelligence. Which you therefore have to rightly ask the question then, as David Icke does, what actually is artificial intelligence? And yes, I know about David Icke and being controlled opposition, but that does not mean that he also says some true things, because of course they do. If these people put forth all this time, energy, and effort to construct this whole complex control system, why would they just hand it over to AI? Because that makes them obsolete. When you understand the bigger picture, you have to wonder, where's all this really coming from? Another technocrat who has played a role in the New World Order is Al Gore. He's promoted the global warming panic in order to increase his own wealth by hundreds of millions of dollars, and has enacted policies that would alter government and our future by placing humankind in harm's way. Gore directed all funding to ensure the climate change agenda become a top priority for the United States government. Gore created President's Council on Sustainable Development. Charter was revised on April 25th, 1997, and the scope of activities was dramatically altered. Gore directed that agenda was to be exclusively a global warming agenda to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. He claimed there would be no debate regarding the science behind the new agenda. Gore deliberately silenced all opposition. Above is only a basic summary of Technocracy and Technocrats. For further study, I highly recommend everyone to check out the work of Patrick Wood, who is leading expert and voice today speaking out about Technocracy, who might glean the majority of my information for the above paragraphs. So, yes. And I did see that they made some artificial intelligence turret or something to deal with border crossers. That is crazy. That is insane. Every aspect will be under this artificially intelligent hive mind. The singularity, right? Let's move on. Okay, I really hope you're ready for this one. This one might get this video taken down. It might get taken down. But that's okay, because we're at that point now to where we should be willing to risk it. Just because. America's most secret intelligence agency, Deagle, forecasts the population of the world from the situation crisis and the Great Reset. One of America's most secret intelligence agency, Deagle, forecast in its latest report the depopulation of the world because of the C-19 crisis and the Great Reset. Notice this was written on April 9th, 2021. So Deagle must have updated their site. Deagle states that the formerly known as second and third world nations are unknown at this point. Their fate will depend upon decisions they take in the future. If they remain tied to the former world order, they will go down along Western powers. Deagle, America's most secret intelligence agency. Deagle is America's most secret intelligence agency, so secretive that few people know of its existence, and others claim that the organization doesn't legitimately exist at all. Despite the overwhelming suppression of its significance, Deagle was routinely used by the CIA and other security outfits. WikiLeaks documents have revealed Deagle was legitimately used as a reference material in a Stratfor report on the technological capabilities of the People's Republic of North Korea. Stratfor is known in the intelligence community as Consultant CIA or Shadow CIA. According to their own website, Deagle.com, Deagle provides news and intelligence on international military aviation and advanced technologies. The website has articles dating back 2003, but little is known about the real owners. Deagle's reports, in particular the aforementioned research on North Korea, were also provided to the president during presidential daily briefings. Deagle thus provides information which is subsequently used by global intelligence communities and governments. Here's a partial list of Deagle partners and clients according to their own website. NSA, NATO, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OSCE, Russian Defense Procurement Agency, Stratfor, World Bank, and the United Nations. So they work with American, Russian, and United Nations partners? Almost as if it's a world agenda. Depopulation due to situation. That's what I call it here. Try not to get this taken down at least. I'm really going to try to watch what I'm saying. Especially if it starts talking about the cure. They really don't like that. This highly regarded intelligence organization has a grim outlook for the United States and the world in the coming years, including a significant decrease in population. Deagle has for some time now predicted in its forecast for 2025 a steep decline in U.S. population and of the world. Excerpts from the unnerving forecast are provided below. In 2014, we published a disclaimer about the forecast. In 6 years, the scenario has changed dramatically. This new disclaimer is meant to single out the situation from 2020 onwards. Oh look, now they're calling it the situation. And this is from Deagle.com, by the way. Talking about the United States and the European Union as separated entities no longer makes sense. Both are the Western Bloc, keep printing money and will share the same fate. After a situation, we can draw two major conclusions. The Western world success model has been built over societies with no resilience that can barely withstand any hardship, even a low-intensity one. It was assumed, but we got the full confirmation beyond any doubt. The situation will be used to extend the life of this dying economic system through the so-called Great Reset. The Great Reset, like the climate change, extinction rebellion, planetary crisis, green revolution, shale oil, hoaxes promoted by the system, is another attempt to slow down dramatically the consumption of natural resources and therefore extend the lifetime of the current system. It could be effective for a while, but it won't address the bottom line problem and will only delay the inevitable. The core ruling elites hope to stay in power, which is, in effect, the only thing that really worries them. The collapse of Western financial system and ultimately the Western civilization has been the major driver in the forecast, along with confluence of crisis with a devastating outcome. As the situation has proven, Western societies embracing multiculturalism and extreme liberalism are unable to deal with any real hardship. It's quite likely that the economic crisis due to lockdowns will cause more deaths in the virus worldwide. And, well, something else too, but I won't say it. The stark reality of diverse and multicultural Western societies that a collapse will have a toll of 50 to 80% depending on several factors. But in general terms, the most diverse, multicultural, indebted, and wealthy, highest standard of living, that's how they define wealthy, will suffer the highest toll. The only glue that keeps united such aberrant collage from falling apart is overconsumption with heavy doses of bottomless degeneracy disguised as virtue. That's perfect saying for our current political situation. Degeneracy disguised as virtue. That's perfect. Nevertheless, the widespread censorship Hate laws and contradictory signals mean that even the glue is not working anymore. Not everybody has to die. Migration can also play a positive role in this. The formerly known as second and third world nations are an unknown at this point. Their fate will depend upon the decisions they take in the future. Western powers are not going to take over them as they did in the past because these countries won't be able to control their own cities, far less likely countries that are far away. If they remain tied to the former world order, they will go down along with Western powers. There's a lot of bad blood in the Western societies, and the protests, demonstrations, rioting, and looting are only the first symptoms of what is coming. However, a new trend is taking place overshadowing this one. 6 years ago, the likelihood of a major war was tiny. Since then, it has grown steadily and dramatically, and today is by far the most likely major event in the 2020s. Another particularity of the Western system is that its individuals have been brainwashed to the point the majority accept their moral high ground and technological edge as a given. This has given rise to the supremacy of emotional arguments over rational ones, which are ignored or deprecated. The mindset could play a key role in upcoming catastrophic events. Over the next decade, it will become obvious that the West is behind Russia and China bloc, and that the malaise might grow into desperation. Going to war might seem a quick and easy solution to restore the lost hegemony, to finally find them into a France 1940 movement. There is not a dramatic change, of course, in the world is going to witness the first nuclear war. The Western Bloc collapse may come before, during, or after. It does not matter. A nuclear war is a game with billions of casualties, and the collapse plays in the hundreds of millions. And it doesn't even have to be a nuclear war. It could just be a widespread war using ballistic missiles. Get the same job done. An interesting statement regarding the forecast was made by the authors of Deagle's forecast page on October 26, 2014. Historically, a change in the economic paradigm has resulted in a death toll that is rarely highlighted by mainstream historians. When the transition from rural areas to large cities happened in Europe, many people unable to accept the new paradigm killed themselves. They killed themselves by a psychological factor. This is not mainstream, but it is true. A new crisis joins old, well-known patterns with new ones. We are not a death or satanic cult or arms dealers, as some BS is floating around the internet on this topic. Take into account the forecast is nothing more than a model, whether flawed or correct. It is not God's word or a magic device that allows to foresee the future. Henry Kissinger and NSSM 200. On December 10, 1974, the U.S. National Security Council, under Henry Kissinger, completed a classified 200-page study. National Security Study Memorandum 200. Implications of worldwide population growth for U.S. security and overseas interests. The study falsely claimed that population growth in the so-called lesser developed countries, like India, was a grave threat to U.S. national security. Oh yeah, big threat. Adopted as official policy in November 1975 by President Gerald Ford, NSSM 200 outlined a covert plan to reduce population growth in those countries, including India, through birth control, and also implicitly war and famine. Brent Scowcroft, that's how you say his name, who had by then replaced Kissinger as National Security Advisor, was put in charge of implementing the plan. Sounds like presidents. Presidents put the plan forth. The next president will oversee carrying out of the plan. CIA Director George Bush was ordered to assist Scowcroft, as were the Secretaries of State, Treasury, Defense, and Agriculture. King George VI, which is 6, and Royal Commission on Population. The bogus arguments that Kissinger advanced were not original. One of his major sources was the Royal Commission on Population, which King George VI had created in 1944. to consider what measures should be taken in the national interest to influence the future trend of population. The commission found that Britain was gravely threatened by population growth in its colonies, the biggest being India, since a populous country has decided advantages over a sparsely populated one for industrial production. The combined effects of increasing population and industrialization in colonies, it warned, quote, might be decisive in its effects on the prestige and influence of the West, especially affecting military strength and security. And SSM 200 similarly conducted that the United States was threatened by population growth in the former colonial sector. It paid special attention to 13 key countries, which the United States had special political and strategic interests: India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Turkey, Nigeria, Egypt, Ethiopia, Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia. It claimed the population growth in those states was especially worrisome, since it would quickly increase their relative political, economic, and military strength. Population control law. Here we go. This policy, known infamously as depopulation policy, and now being normalized through Hollywood movies, the latest being personified by Thanos in Marvel's Infinity War, was imported to India via United Nations Agenda 21. Sadly, many successive Indian prime ministers have been implementing this dangerous policy. The new population control law being advocated recently is actually Agenda 21, which is a British policy to reduce population of former colonies like India through various sterilization projects and other policies implemented through the United Nations and popularized by Hollywood, and effectively keep nations under Anglo-American orbit. You know why they went for all those countries first? And still are? Because they were the easiest. They had to get the low-hanging fruit. But yes, oh yes, a lot of stuff is going on with all of this. Just the whole situation in general. People would rather stay asleep. People don't want to learn. I was talking to Tim earlier. This is what we were talking about. People don't... It's not that they don't care. They just are... Even if they did care, they just give up. And they just go for anything that they see on the news. No matter what it says, no matter how many discrepancies you could find, no matter how many times they openly lie to you, no matter how many times they backtrack, it doesn't matter. They'll believe it. If they came on today and said 2 plus 2 was 5, people would believe that. And then they came on tomorrow and said 2 plus 2 is 3. People would then believe that because experts said. The fact is, both are a lie. 2 plus 2 is 4. Crazy. I seen comments earlier. I was going to do a sheeple comments. I'm doing one of those again soon. My last one was a long time ago, and the one I was going to do, the video got taken down by the author. But this person was talking about how they're not going to let their daughter get the cure for good reason. And this person commented back and said, "You are being misled and brainwashed and manipulated by white nationalists and conspiracy theorists." And I said, that is why QAnon was a thing. To create that mindset right there. Right there. And they lump it all in together. You can't even just be labeled one thing anymore. You have to be all of them. All or none. Crazy. Let me see what else I got before we go. I was going to bring this one up the other day, and this is the IMF, of course, International Monetary Fund, official. A world with more than one reserve currency is a more stable world. And as you know, the dollar has been the world reserve currency for a very long time, our whole lifetime. I don't think anybody alive today has been alive before the dollar was set as the world reserve currency. And that was on purpose, as I have discussed many times. Many times. Because then when they bring that down, the whole world economy goes with it. But now you got the IMF out here talking about this. A world with more than one reserve currency is a more stable world. Tommaso Mancini Grifoli, of Division Chief for the International Monetary Fund, said Monday. Mancini was responding to a question from CoinDesk Managing Director Emily Parker during CoinDesk TV's coverage of Consensus 2021, the company's annual conference that brings together experts and influencers in cryptocurrency, global finance, and more. Parker had asked whether the U.S. should be concerned that China's underdevelopment central bank digital currency could threaten the dominance of the U.S. dollar as the world global reserve currency. Actually, yeah. Because in the book, Great Reset, they talk about how the dollar, the fate of the U.S. dollar, and how that's literally a chapter, and how it won't be the world reserve currency anymore. Quote, I'm not saying this is the case for the U.S. dollar, explained Mancini, whose full title was Division Chief of IMF Monetary and Capital Markets Payments and Infrastructure Team. This is a theoretical argument that underpins the greater stability of the world, with multiple reserve currencies. So I think from an international perspective, that there will be more than one is a welcome proposition, Mancini said. He added that the world already has multiple reserve currencies, including the dollar, euro, and Japanese yen. Okay, in March, Augustine Karsten, general manager of the Bank for International Settlements, said China would not get a first mover advantage over the U.S. by issuing a CBDC. A month later, Jerome Powell, head of the U.S. Federal Reserve, said China's rush to develop its digital yuan will not push the U.S. into digital currency rates. He's lying. The U.S. has already entered into that race. They're already talking about digital wallets and digital dollars and all this stuff. Meanwhile, China has been quietly testing a digital yuan. Mancini's own statement comes after the IMF published a report last year that said CBDCs could benefit countries looking to exert more control over their monetary policy, but they are not a solution for every crisis. The currency substitution. Mancini also said crypto assets are still too small to be a significant source of financial stability. Risks. Sorry, I was looking at something real quick. There's people walking down the road. I don't know what they're doing. I really don't. But, oh well. For crypto assets to be significant risk to central banks, there needs to be a considerable amount of currency substitution, Mancini said. Which, in this context, means countries would have to use a theoretically more stable cryptocurrency instead or in addition to the local currency. Mancini added that currency substitution is a big concern internationally, not just with crypto assets, but also with stable coins and CBDCs, because countries with weaker institutions, high inflation, and volatile exchange rates have an increasing degree of currency substitution. These are exactly the types of issues that need to be tackled through international cooperation. It always goes back to international. Has to be an international solution, a world solution, a world government solution. I always tell people it's all about the world government, nothing else. Everything you see, all about bringing about world government, that's it. That's been the plan for so long, thousands of years. Since the first one, which was, of course, Babylon under Nimrod. You know, when the world was all of one language and of one mind, and they were only limited by their imaginations, and that's when God had to come down and split the world, confuse the languages, split the races to all four corners of the earth, so they didn't have a world government. Although cryptocurrencies can usually be created over a short period of time, It doesn't necessarily make them good candidates as global reserve currencies, Mancini said. CoinDesk managing editor of Global Capital Markets, Lawrence Lewitton, asked him if it would make sense for the institution to issue its own digital currency that can act as a global reserve currency. When Mancini responded that a global reserve currencies cannot be created overnight. Lewitton argued that currencies like Bitcoin and even the euro were created relatively quickly, and the IMF, a neutral institution, should be able to create one should it have such a mandate. I wouldn't call the IMF a neutral institution. We know what side they're on. Literally call it the International Monetary Fund. But we'll end it here for today, and we'll pick it up again tomorrow or probably Tuesday. I know I got off my schedule. I had a schedule going for a while, but I'm not a scheduled person, so I'll get to it. I'm going to make a video going over recent news. And I have been reading more emails from you guys. And so far, you guys have been sending me all kind of stuff. And I really appreciate it. I encourage everybody to keep emailing me. Keep sending me things. If you want me to tell your stories, those of you who sent me your personal stories, tell me and I will share them. Most definitely, we will pray for you. Speaking of prayer, let's say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not unto temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.